So Jimmy Dore is a progressive YouTuber, but he's someone that I think it's safe to say actively hurts the progressive cause in many ways. He is someone that, for example, he said that getting Donald Trump elected to the presidency would be more beneficial than Hillary Clinton because it would like cause the progressives to like rally behind Donald Trump or rally underneath like the presidency of Donald Trump, and that we would actually get all this progressive change because of that. Not even remotely what happened. We saw that the left really took a hit by Donald Trump being elected. We saw tons of conservative legislation passed. It was just what he thought would happen just didn't. And I'm like 99% sure he was also someone that during this most recent election did not think that you should vote for Joe Biden and thought that that he doesn't think that there is a fundamental difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, I am a huge I will all the time say that the Democrats, I think there are so many problems with them. I think that they have so many flaws. They don't fight hard enough for many things, but there is a difference between the Democratic Party, and the Republican Party. Jimmy Dore does not see that difference. Now, usually his lunacy is kept within his YouTube channel, which I think most of the people that watch his show are conservatives, Republicans. But it seems to be that the things he is saying have started to permeate into outside of Jimmy Dore, and this is where it gets concerning. So NFL player Justin Jackson said, if at AOC in the squad don't do what Jimmy Dore has suggested and withhold their vote for Pelosi for speakership unless Medicare for All gets brought to the floor for a vote, they will be revealing themselves. Power concedes nothing without a demand. And so this is Justin Jackson is actually someone that has spoken out for a lot of progressive issues, and it's actually very exciting. But I'm concerned because now he is talking about the things that Jimmy Dore has said, because Jimmy Dore has made this claim, and if you go to his Twitter page, all he talks about is this. He says that if the progressives in the House don't withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi to become Speaker of the House and ask her to get a floor vote for Medicare for All, that they are actually just secretly not progressive. They're secretly just neoliberals in the behind underneath what they say to be. There are a few layers to this. So one, I do not think that Jimmy Dore is levying these criticisms in good faith. That is the problem, is that I don't think that he actually thinks that this can happen. I don't think that he wants this to happen. I think that this is about himself. This is about his personal brand. The problem is that it's not the worst idea in the world, but he's coming at it with such bad intentions. And he thinks that if AOC doesn't do this, that it will become like, she is actually just not a good progressive. And so AOC actually responded to Justin Jackson's tweet. And so let's take a look. So she said, the problem with this idea is that there isn't enough thought given to step two. The Dem votes aren't there yet. And with a razor thin margin, the Dem no's are greater than the margin. So you issue threats, hold your vote, then lose. Then what? If you want to know who's opposed, look at the co-sponsor list. And so I think she's right. I don't think that there are probably enough. So right now, the Democrats have a 15-seat lead, roughly. I know that there's still a few seats that are in question, but roughly a 15-seat lead in the House. I don't know if you could get 15 people that are ardent supporters of Medicare for All. So we got AOC, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib. You got new people coming. You got Cory Bush, Wanda Jones, Jamal Bowman, and Marie Newman. Then you got Ro Khanna. I think that's a solid vote. Pramila Jayapal, that's solid. Maybe you could include like Mark Pocan, Earl Blumenauer, maybe Peter DeFazio, but for the most part, maybe Katie Porter. I think that she's probably right, though, that Democrats just don't have the vote to have that kind of leverage at the moment. So now they could maybe get other things, and AOC talks about that. In contrast, you can use leverage to push for things that can happen and change lives, i.e. a $15 minimum wage in the first 100 days. Doable. Elevating longtime progressive champions to important positions of leadership. Also doable. That's the opportunity cost away. So Justin Jackson responded. He said, why aren't they there? The people of the party are there. It's not acceptable. Leadership isn't there. If they have no threat of not staying in leadership, what's the point? Pelosi was speaker for 2 years with no Medicare for All vote. What is your plan to force her to get a vote? And so the problem is that there is a very big kernel of truth. There's a giant kernel of truth to this, that it is embarrassing that with a Democrat-led House that we haven't had a vote on Medicare for All yet. That is pretty ridiculous. But I think that what they're calling for right now, what Jimmy Dore is calling for, and now Justin Jackson and many other prominent progressives, is that they're saying that this needs to happen right now. And AOC talks a little bit about this. So why aren't they there is the real question. We watched the presidential debates and saw how many fiercely defend our for-profit insurance system. And she's talking about the Democratic debates, not just the presidential one when Donald Trump talked about it. She's talking about the Democratic debate. Almost all of them, besides Bernie Sanders and to a degree Elizabeth Warren, were defending for-profit health insurance. But know that the movement pressure, positive support, primaries, popularity, organizing, etc., is working. More co-sponsors now than ever. And then Justin Jackson says, would love Democrats to be on the record denying their constituents healthcare during a pandemic. Sounds like good politics for the progressive movement in our goals. AOC responded one more time with, I respect that, and in an important way, they are on the record. There are 118 Dems who have publicly signed on to guaranteed healthcare during this term. Here they are. And then she lists, the co-sponsor list. And then Justin Jackson responds one more time with, that sounds like 118 Democrats who can use their leverage to get a Medicare for all floor vote. It's unacceptable that 118 coalition of Dems who support Medicare for all can't even get a vote, something to consider. And so I think that it's also really important to remember that the 118 Democrats, unfortunately, that are co-sponsoring Medicare for all, there's a lot of them that I don't think actually do. I already listed the ones that I think are strongly for Medicare for all, but that's probably not enough to close the gap to do this. But I do think that Justin Jackson is on to something. I think that Jimmy Dore is, like I said, while very, very bad faith, I think that he's speaking to something that does ring true to a lot of people. And so I actually want to go to this because you might say, well, why isn't AOC fighting for any of the things that we need? So there is also, let's see, we'll share this one here. And so there was another back and forth that she had where she said, so this is Matt Solar. He said, I'm enjoying Jimmy Dore putting House progressives on the spot and how they aren't demanding anything in return for giving Pelosi their vote for speaker. He's pointing out they have not organized a coherent political agenda. And so this is the idea that maybe the progressives just aren't asking for anything, that they're not doing anything. So AOC responds to this, and I feel like this is really important. They aren't demanding anything is an assumption and a false one. These structural negotiations are happening. They just aren't live tweeted. These negotiations started a month ago and include House rules, pay-go exemptions, committee makeup, vote commitments, investigations, etc. Last term, progressives got the first ever congressional hearing in history on Medicare for all, allowing for markup. That happens despite thrashing opposition from other Dems. But it goes both ways. Progressives do withhold, but conservative Dems also block. The numbers matter. And so I think that she says it all right there. Progressives have this election cycle doubled their size in Congress. That's great. That is so huge. But we have to face the reality that as of right now, they are a small minority still, even within the Democratic Party, not just in Congress, within the Democratic Party. And they just don't have the bargaining power that we would like them to have. And I think that it's really weird that all of this negative attention is getting thrown at AOC, who's probably the most active supporter of Medicare for all in Congress. There's so many people you could criticize for this, so many people. But to call AOC out and say that she is the villain for not she has done, and that's all. It also just ignores the other really large contributions that AOC has made to the progressive movement. I mean, this is easily the most dynamic up and coming figure in the left. If you have any interest in left politics, AOC should get you very excited. But that's why I think that a lot of these criticisms are being levied in bad faith. And so we're actually going to go to Jimmy Dore on his show, talked about this specifically, and I think it's a little revealing. I think that it shows, like I said, that Jimmy Dore doesn't have pure intentions in what he's calling for. And I think that that's a problem. All right, and so we'll play this and then we'll talk about it.
Back to AOC. She says the whole point of protesting is to make people uncomfortable. That's what I'm trying to do, and that's what you need to do to Nancy Pelosi, AOC, you fucking Twitter warrior. Now it's not your time. Now it's your chance to actually use your leverage. Will you? Or will you be a party fucking climber? A bullshit Twitter warrior, because that's all this is. Now's the time for you to make somebody uncomfortable. Are you going to make somebody uncomfortable, AOC? Or are you going to reveal that voting for progressives inside the Democratic Party is a fool's errand?
There it is. That's my problem. That is my problem because Jimmy Dore has a secret agenda. He has repeatedly said that he does not think that Democrats should try to infiltrate the Democratic Party. When I say infiltrate, I just mean, primary, current, more moderate Democrats. He doesn't think that that's a good way to get real change. He thinks that you should vote for the Green Party, or he thinks that I honestly don't know what Jimmy Dore thinks. He's one of these people who thinks Democrats and Republicans are just the same. And so because of that, he doesn't view electoral politics as the way to get things done, but he doesn't talk about things to get things done outside of electoral politics. So he criticizes the system, says that they're all the same, you can't do anything about it, and then doesn't offer an alternative. And so instead what we have is he says the whole system is corrupt, and he tries to drag down progressives like AOC, he said negative things about Cori Bush, Ilhan Omar, all of them. He thinks that he says there's no difference between them and a Dan Crenshaw. in the Republican Party, which is obviously ridiculous. And it ignores the fact that AOC has brought some of the most significant legislation that we've seen in decades with the Green New Deal to the purview of the public by talking about that. That is huge. And some people are upset because it's not like the original Green New Deal that came from the Green Party, but it's, I mean, massive. It would be the most massive piece of legislation ever passed through Congress. Like if AOC, the Green New Deal that AOC proposed, that is a gigantic deal. And it's not just that, she's brought so many other issues to the forefront. And like, that's just as one person. I mean, she does have Ilhan Omar, she does have Rashida Tlaib and Ayanna Pressley. They're not as vocal as her though. I mean, she has really been the face of this whole thing. And so to act like she's just, it's pretty ridiculous. And it goes on for a little bit longer. And so we'll keep watching.
It's up to you right now. You already voted for the Patriot Act. The squad already voted to extend the surveillance state. You already voted for the CARES Act. You already voted for the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history without getting anybody anything. You got them crumbs. You already voted for the largest upward. Did you think anybody voted for you to replace Joe Crowley so you could vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker and then vote for the largest upward transfer of wealth in history?
See, this is the problem, is that he doesn't view replacing Joe Crowley and AOC as like a positive thing. He thinks it's just all the same. And like, yes, I wasn't crazy, obviously, about the CARES Act. The CARES Act had so many problems with it. But I don't think people like Jimmy Dore understand how bad it would. Bernie Sanders voted for the CARES Act. Like, is that what it is? Unanimous support the CARES Act got. And so it's like, is no one a progressive? There's literally no one in Congress that is fighting. Like, the reason that they voted for the CARES Act with the unanimous support is that in spite of all the problems that there was with it, which there were a ton, it was just a massive corporate giveaway, but there was expanded unemployment benefits. There was the $1,200 checks, which were not enough. Don't get me wrong, they were not enough. But the narrative that would have been spun if AOC, Ilhan Omar, Bernie Sanders, if they were the only people that voted against it, they would have said, oh, they don't actually want to help. This is they're really showing their true colors here and this and that. And it would have been used against it, because when they don't have the leverage to withhold their votes in that way on something that large, that like would be like, you got to take perception into account, because it's not like, okay, when they withhold their votes on like the military budget, like obviously the military budget is still going to go through because there's so many people that do support it. But with the CARES Act, but you can make a good argument against the military budget. The CARES Act, that's a little bit more nuanced, and people aren't necessarily going to understand all the nuances of like the fact that like, oh, this is actually, it allows for the Fed to like, leverage a bunch of money to give to corporations. That's not something that's intuitive to people. All they're going to hear is AOC voted against relief for people. And so that doesn't work, and it doesn't help her. It doesn't, like, whether or not the CARES Act passed 435-0 or 434-1, no difference. It makes absolutely no difference. There was no chance of it not passing. And so to rail against her for that is just insane in my mind. And it's because Jimmy Dore doesn't actually care, though. He doesn't want progressives to actually succeed in the Democratic Party. He has no real goal. I think he really just cares about like the way that he's perceived and like his own purity politics. And I think it's really, really damaging. And the problem is that with this one issue, he's actually like got onto something that does, I think, isn't the worst idea in the world. The idea of withholding votes from Nancy Pelosi to get a vote for Medicare for all, because it's not a big ask. That's the thing. Getting a vote for Medicare for all is not a big ask. But the problem is his, well, what if they don't? His what if they don't is that they're actually villains, and that there's no difference between them and the Republicans. And that's the problem, is that there's a nefarious actor behind this movement. Now, I think it's not necessary. You've had people like Anna Kasparian who have come out and said, Jimmy Dore, crazy, it's insane what he's saying, but this isn't the worst idea in the world. And so I think that, who knows, I don't know though, if progressives have the votes though. I don't know if they can, there's enough supporters of Medicare for all that are like true supporters where they will withhold their votes from Nancy Pelosi to do that. And you also got to think, okay, what about a threat that you aren't willing to fulfill? Say progressives withhold their vote from Nancy Pelosi, and it actually goes through, Nancy Pelosi's unwilling to do it. We have a Republican Speaker of the House. That would be really, really bad. And if people would blame progressives for that, and it's something to think about. And I think that when the margins are so slim on the support that progressives would be able to get, I worry about like the effects that would have. But the problem with Jimmy Dore is that he doesn't think that there's any difference between a Republican Speaker of the House or with a Democratic Speaker of the House. He's even said, like, he's explicitly said that he's like, or Nancy Pelosi won't get us a vote on Medicare for all. So what's the difference if it's a Republican? It's a huge difference. There's a ton of difference. But he also, I mean, he didn't think that the Supreme Court was a big deal when it was in 2016. He openly said that, like, oh yeah, maybe Donald Trump might get 3 different appointments. He goes, but that's he said that's not likely. Democrats can just filibuster, even though they couldn't if Republicans controlled the Senate. But he just doesn't have like a fundamental understanding, I think, of like the way that these things work, and it's coming out in a very negative way. But I also think that this is a nuanced conversation because it's not a bad tactic. It's just a problem when Jimmy Dore is just such a nefarious actor. But regardless, we'll see how this transpires. I believe the vote will be held on January 3rd or 4th. So somewhere around there. Early January is when the vote will happen. Oh, no, that can't be right. I'm not sure when the vote happens, actually. Don't take my word on it. But regardless, it'll be interesting to see how this goes. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great day.